This blog I entitle Microfillers, and it's a bit confusing because I think a lot of people think microfillers means really, really tiny amounts. Sort of that is true, but I will clarify in a minute. Also, I do a lot of hyaluronic acid, which means injecting small amounts of hyaluronic acid into the dermis to improve the skin texture. That is something else that I guess could be deemed microfillers, but I'm actually not talking about that. Also, when I talk about microfillers, I can be putting in 4 to 6 syringes, which doesn't seem very micro at all. So let's define what a microfiller is. So before we do that, let's talk about how to conceptualize the aging of the face. If you understand that volume loss is a component, there's gravity, there's wrinkles and everything like that. But volume loss is definitely one component. And then the natural idea is to sort of volumetrically expand the face. Yes, that can be done, and it is done, and I do that. However, the problem with just volumizing the face is several-fold. Number one is it can cost quite a bit of money because it takes so many syringes to augment a face through volume. And then the other component of it is that there are certain areas that someone can look overfilled. So from the best cost-benefit ratio, as well as limiting the chance of overfilling a face, I do this in a different fashion. So let me explain the style that I do this. Think of the face in terms of watershed zones. So what watershed zones means, there's a transition of bone. So let's say, for example, under the eyes, the most classic area, there's a transition from the bony rim to the hollow eyelid. And if you can just fill that transition, you can create a very good result where the eye looks blended into the face, where you're not actually augmenting the entire anterior cheek, but just a transition zone, or what I call a watershed area. So the same thing, let's take a look at the outer cheek. When you can start to see the edge of the bone below the cheek, that's a sign of aging. And so a lot of women tell me they want to have cheekbones, and that's actually exactly the opposite. If you see a piece of bone sticking out the side of your face, you are actually showing aging. So what young women have is a cheek mound. Now the trick with the cheek mound is you don't want it in the anterior place in the front cheek, because that just looks very pumpkin face and looks abnormal. So what I do is I fill under the arch of the bone, which is the zygomatic arch, and if I just put a little bit under there, that transition zone, your brain erases your ability to see the bone. So if you can hit these little bony transitions on the face, looking for these shadow points, for example, the temple area, you can look at what's called conjoined tenon, which is the transition from the temple over to the forehead. If you can just hit that little edge, your brain can erase part of the temple. Now, there's a lot more sophistication to this than I'm talking about. I can tell you a million examples on the face where my brain is constantly looking for these transitions. But even if I'm using several syringes of fillers, I'm still putting these little drops in these little edges of the face because, one syringe is equal to 1/5 of a teaspoon. I've had a lady that I've done work on for 15 years. She was on a layover, put one syringe in her face and made the whole face look fake. So one syringe can make someone look abnormal if it's done wrong, but I can put in 12 syringes and still make it look natural. So microfillers, what I'm defining here is not a small amount of fillers, although yes, I can use very small amount of fillers to make a big difference. I can use one syringe oftentimes, still make a nice change. I'm talking about understanding these transition zones between the bone edges. And if you can just cover these little bone edges, you can make a really, really nice change of the face and make it look so much more youthful. And for a lot of my patients that are first-timers, I'll do a little area, show it to them, let them compare both sides. Like, wow, you put in 1/10 of a syringe and you made this difference? Yes. Now, obviously, the more I put in, the greater longevity, and that's another subject, as I've really seen these fillers last many years once you start the building process, but I'm going to relegate that description to another process, to another blog. But just to suffice to say, when I talk about microfillers, I'm not talking about a small amount in total. I'm talking about small amounts in multiple small areas of the face to cover bone edges and what I call watershed areas. So hopefully that has you start to begin to understand some of my concepts of how I approach the face.